welcome. This is going to be a presentation about ice in Minnesota.
Mike's not working.
Not working? It's working, just for fun. It's going to be a presentation, as we've indicated, about ice in Minnesota. And Colin Rust here lives in St. Paul's. Close. He lived here from 2015 until 2019. He grew up in Vermont and California, and he was in active duty in the Navy for in his 20s and in his 30s. And he went to law school in North Carolina, married a lady in front of me here, and they've been married for 40 years, 2 children, and they've just got grandchildren. He still comes to Fairhope, tries to come every year, and we're lucky to have him here now. So over to you, Colin. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. Appreciate it. You know, I'm really lucky to be here tonight, and I really want to thank my wife, Pam. She's in the front row here. And fortunate for me, when we got married, it was kind of a package deal, and Fairhope came along with Pam. Pam's folks lived on Fairhope Avenue up until, how long ago was it? 2024, 2020? Yeah. So not that long ago. I've had the opportunity to come to Fairhope for about 40 years. Pam's been coming for about 60. Our kids think this is like their second home. And so it's been wonderful for us to be able to go back and forth. And we lived here, like I said, for 5 years, and that's how I got to meet a number of you. One thing I guess I really should fess up here. We bought a house. We moved from Fairhope to Minnesota in 2019, right before the pandemic. And we had some work done on the house, and we thought, what a great time to get out of Minnesota. We'll go down to Fairhope. So we came down here just when the pandemic was descending on the country, the world. And what I'm confessing to you tonight is I think I got the last package of toilet paper at Winn-Dixie right before everything shut down. So anyway. So Pam and I live in a town called Mendota Heights. It's right across what's known as the High Bridge across the Mississippi from downtown St. Paul. It's a small town, but it's very, very close to St. Paul. Like, I mean, a couple hundred yards at the most. And we lived in St. Paul since 1994. Our kids went to public high school there, and one of them, our youngest son, Keenan, still lives in St. Paul. That's fine. We can start with this slide. Okay. So I want to just set the stage. First of all, when I talk about ICE agents, there are Customs and Border Protection agents, there are Federal Bureau of Prison agents, and there are ICE agents. I'm just going to refer to them all as ICE tonight. Illegals. Wherever I go, I hear this expression, they're illegals. And one thing, we embarked last summer to try to get out in front of what we thought might be an issue. Little did we know it was going to be governing our lives largely for a few months. But one thing we were able to discern through our research and through people we met that are immigrants in our country, tons of them are here legally. They are going through the asylum process. They have temporary protected status. They are refugees. Each one of these carries with it a definition. And these people, before coming to the United States, they're well aware of our regulations and what they need to do to comply, to stay in our country. And one of the key things to recall is they don't come here and get into the United States looking for a job. They come here if they're persecuted in their home country. And that persecution can take a number of forms. It can be political persecution, you're with the wrong political party. It can be religious persecution, you're a Christian in a Muslim country, or vice versa. You can be subject to gang violence. You can be gay, and that's not permitted in your culture. And then the evidentiary burden is on you to show all this. Then you get entry in the United States, the asylum or the immigration court process begins. There aren't enough judges, the process is complex and it takes a long time, but people can fill out a form, I think it's called an I-766, and if you fill that out, the government approves it, you get what is known as an employment authorization document, more commonly known as a work permit. This is a federal card, it looks like a driver's license. It has a UCIS number on it, and with that they can track you in the ICE system. They also issue you a social security number. So you can see where this is going. Employers can hire you legally, they can pay you, they dock your pay for federal income taxes, you file taxes, you pay into Social Security, and when they pay into Social Security, they're not entitled to receive it. People like me get that money. So they're paying in, and they don't get it out. So anyway, I just wanted to spend a little time, and that's not everybody. Certainly there are people that jump over the wall or swim the Rio Grande or overstay their student visas. Sure, there are a lot of people that do that too. But there are an awful lot of people in this country legally, and they are targets of ICE today. The second thing I want to talk about is just ICE in Minnesota. ICE is not new to Minnesota. ICE has been around since 2001, right after the attacks in New York. The Department of Homeland Security was formed, or basically became a separate cabinet-level department, and ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement folks, that agency started. They have 150 people approximately in Minnesota and have for 20 years. They have a great relationship with the Minnesota Department of Corrections, with sheriffs and counties across Minnesota. They get a detainer when there's an immigrant in prison, and after they serve their sentence, they're turned over by state officials in Minnesota to ICE for deportation. So there's not, I think if you watch, depending on where you get your news source, you hear, oh, Minnesota's a sanctuary state, and there's these illegal immigrants are running amok, and they love having, felons running amok. It's simply not true. The state of Minnesota has worked very closely with ICE right up until this current administration and the flood of new immigrants. You want to go to the next slide? I guess I can. Okay. Unauthorized immigrants. How does Minnesota compare to Alabama and other states? Minnesota has about 100,000 unauthorized immigrants in the state. We have a population of about 5.7 million, of which 3.7 million are in the Twin Cities. Alabama has about 50,000. Notice the population size between Alabama and Minnesota are pretty close. So we have more immigrants in Alabama? Yeah, maybe roughly 2 times. But contrast the number of immigrants in Minnesota versus California, Texas, and Florida. They have millions of unauthorized immigrants in those states. Twin Cities. The Twin Cities, like I said, has roughly 3.7 million people. I did a little digging around, and if you were and contrasting it with our old home state of Alabama. So if you took Montgomery, Birmingham, Huntsville, Mobile, and Tuscaloosa and mushed them all together, that'd be about the same size as the Twin Cities. A big city, to be sure, but a city that's small enough that you can get across it, traffic permitting, in about an hour east-west and about an hour north-south. It's not a big metro area compared to Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston. It's tiny by comparison. By the same token, Minnesota has a very high voter turnout, a high level of civic engagement, tremendously high levels of philanthropy, got major sports teams, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a nice city, good quality of life, but it has all the problems that comes with big city, including crime, homelessness, et cetera. The racial makeup of the Twin Cities, you can see right there, it's largely white, with Asian, Black, Hispanic making up smaller portions. We've had a large influx of immigration in recent years. And when I say recent, I'm saying 30, 40 years. There's a large Hmong population, and people who don't know that's Asian from Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. They came right after the Vietnam War, so there's a large Asian population, and there's a large Somali population, relative speaking. About 82,000 Somali Americans, 82,000, of which some 95% of them are either born in the United States or naturalized US citizens. The summer of 2025. So this is the big beautiful bill passes. The government gets tons of money redirected from Medicaid and from SNAP benefits towards ICE, hiring of ICE agents and the build out of ICE detention facilities. All that money is being spent right now. It was at this time, Pam and I decided, we want to get involved a little bit more. So we started volunteering at a food bank because of the SNAP issues. The food was being cut back from a lot of citizens. And also, we got involved in immigration to the extent we basically affiliated, I'll say, with a small group of, a community group that takes care of, helps out supporting immigrants. In that time, we met several immigrants. They were all, and this is what I want to emphasize, all of them fall in that category that I described before. So they're all legally in the country, they all pay taxes, they all have social security numbers, and importantly, they all check in with ICE. They check in with ICE either annually or every 6 months now. They've sped it up so it's every 6 months. I don't know exactly what happens when they go in for their check-in appointment with ICE. I presume that they are checking to see if they have any criminal activity on their record in the last 6 months, at which point they'd probably be in trouble. But if not, they just say goodbye and off you go until the next 6 months go by and you come in and check in. All the time, you're waiting for your asylum hearing. This organization I want to talk about, Monarca. Unidos is the name of the organization. And I went to a briefing at an Episcopal church in Minneapolis. There were a couple hundred people there last July. And basically they were trying to raise money. They were trying to raise money for appeals and for basically asylum hearings. So there are a lot of volunteer attorneys doing pro bono work, but they also they just frankly need help financially for these folks, and that's what they were looking for. They also had a briefing that went on for the better part of, say, 40 minutes. And during that time, they said, if you want to, you can sign up for an app on your phone. We'll send you texts. And when you hear of or see ICE activity, you can call this hotline and we will send out an alert. And when you get that alert on your phone, it's just a message, you can go. And when you go, you can blow a whistle, you can honk a horn. There she is, that's my wife. Honk a horn, you can, and most importantly, you can film. They want a record of what's going on. And when somebody is detained by ICE, when they're being brought to a vehicle, you're trained to look, who are those officers? Are they ICE? Are they Customs and Border Protection? Are they MPD, Minneapolis Police Department? Are they SP St. Paul? What branch of the service, if you will, are they? And also, and this is the key thing, get their name, yell at them, try to get a family member if they want you to get in contact with, and ask them if there are any children or pets left behind in their home. That's the kind of thing that the Monarca alerts, and that became something that basically over time we saw how that morphed into a lot of activity in the coming weeks. So I came home that night after that, and I was like, oh, that's kind of academic, I doubt that will ever happen, whatever. And little did we know that Minneapolis, St. Paul, the metro was going to become just the center of so much activity. So So here, winter of 2025, President Trump announces Somalis are garbage. They destroyed the once great state of Minnesota. And as a result, now Minnesota will suffer reckoning and retribution. Quick thing on the Somalis in Minnesota. There was tremendous fraud during COVID. They took money that had been designated by the feds to go to feeding, food programs, and 57 people were convicted of crimes. A lot of them are now serving. One thing you never learn is it was basically a woman by the name of Amy Bach was the ringleader behind it. She got the stiffest sentence and is serving and the biggest fines, and she stole the most money. A white woman. So nobody was singling out white women, they're just singling out the Somalis. So again, 57 Somalis, all those folks were convicted, tried in up to 2023, but again, you don't hear about it that it was a done deal long ago. You hear about how horrible these Somalis are today. So why Minnesota? Fraud that I just talked about. Our U.S. Senator Tina Smith believes it's due to the fact Donald Trump didn't win Minnesota any of the 3 elections, 2020, 2016, 2024. We know he despises Ilhan Omar. We know he despises our Governor Tim Walz. I don't know, but we were the target. And here's the next slide. Okay. Quick snapshot here again. Law enforcement, before Metro Surge, 150 ICE agents. Between December and February, 3,000 ICE agents to send on St. Paul and Minneapolis. Well, the entire state of Minnesota, to be fair, but most immigrants are in the Twin Cities, so that's where most of them will be. Now, right now, there's between 600 and 900. Contrast that with the police departments at full strength. 600 in Minneapolis, 550 in St. Paul, and 18 in our hometown of Mendota Heights. That's Chief O'Hara in the lower right-hand corner, Chief of Police in Minneapolis, and Axel Henry, and our former mayor in the other picture in the middle, Melvin Carter and Axel Henry. Police have an unbelievably difficult job. Police are there to support and protect the population, the citizens, and you always hear the worst thing for the police is a bad cop. Well, these police officers who wear the uniform, who work to protect the citizens of the Twin Cities, now have 3,000 cops to contend with that they can't control, that are not under their supervision or jurisdiction. Here's the timeline. December, Metro Surge begins. The 3,000 officers, to my knowledge, at least according to our Attorney General, Keith Ellis, said none of them came to investigate fraud. So that was the pretext to send them in there, the Somali fraud. To my knowledge, none of them actually did investigation along those lines. Starting in December, U.S. citizens were arrested. A Somali American was outside his job at lunch, taking a lunch break. He was tackled from behind, and this became the norm, and maybe not the norm, but certainly happened often. Roughed up, he says to them, and he was born in the United States, he talks like you and I do. And he says, I've got my passport, a photo of my passport on my phone, can I show it to you? No. They take him to the Whipple building, which I'm going to talk about more in a minute. He's there for hours. They do facial recognition software. They do other kind of metrics, including his fingerprints and whatnot. They finally confirm, yes, he is in fact an American citizen. They maybe look at his phone and see his passport. They release him. Can I get a ride back? Now you're on your own. It's December. He didn't have a coat on when he went out for his break. And this becomes what we see happening over and over again. And it instills fear. People just start getting more and more scared of the ICE agents that have now just come in mass in unmarked SUVs into the city. There's racial profiling. They go into the neighborhoods. One thing about the Twin Cities I didn't mention before, it's not very well integrated, frankly. It's quite segregated. So if you wanted to racially profile people and you wanted to find a bunch of Asian people, you go to the east side of St. Paul. You want to racially profile Somali Americans, you go to Cedar Riverside in Minneapolis. It's a big complex of apartment towers near the University of Minnesota, or you go along University Avenue in St. Paul. Again, it's not a huge city. You got these hundreds of new guys in town, and they're going up to people and they're asking for their papers. They're asking for their papers, or they're asking them, where were you born? Where were you born? Oh, and I forgot, and they were knocking on the doors on the east side of St. Paul, asking white people where their Hmong neighbors lived. Can you please identify the homes where your Hmong neighbors live? There are flights out of MSP, Minneapolis, St. Paul International, to Texas and Louisiana. When they arrested people, they tried to get them out of the state as quickly as possible. January comes. ICE agents start to stake out schools, bus stops, churches, and hospitals. They stake out schools because parents come to drop off and pick up their children. Some of the parents might have questionable status as far as their wealth. The school systems in Minnesota, and in fact, I think of you as private individuals. Have you ever gone up to somebody and say, gee, you have brown skin. Were you born in this country? What is your immigration status? I don't know anybody that's ever done that. I've never done it. It's the norm now in the Twin Cities with some of the ICE agents that have come there. And frankly, it's been permitted. It's called a Kavanaugh frisk. Justice Kavanaugh is permitted by the Supreme Court in a fairly recent decision. So if like a landscape, somebody's doing landscape work, and they're brown-skinned, these ICE guys can go up there, stop them, and start questioning them. It's not a problem. High school kids at Roosevelt High School in Minneapolis get pepper sprayed when they leave one afternoon. Afraid of ICE agents, not surprisingly, many children start staying home from school. The school systems go online again. Everybody knows that kids fall behind when they try to learn online, but they basically need to start offering that again. Moms mobilize to help other moms. The things that go on in the Twin Cities, neighbors helping neighbors, is a very informal network. It's not like some big, well-trained group, orchestrated from the top. This is a term that's become, this next one, commuters and dispatchers organized in larger numbers. Commuters and dispatchers, there's what's called the Whipple Building in Minneapolis. It's near the airport. In the morning, around 4:30 a.m., the ICE agents start their days out there and get their assignments of where to go. Commuters, and I use that in quotations, commuters are citizens like you and me. They're waiting in the parking lot and then follow the ICE SUVs as they embark. This is legally protected. It's under the First Amendment. You can't interfere with them. If you interfere with them, it's a violation and you can be arrested. If you follow them at a safe distance, you can follow them. People do this and they're on their phones talking to dispatchers. And dispatchers are ready, so when they peel off and go into neighborhoods or go to places of work or go to churches or go to schools, they alert the neighbors via the American texts I told you about. People arrive, they're supposed to stand back, stay out of the way. They can't interfere with these federal officers while they're making arrests, but they can blow their whistle. And when you blow your whistle, or when you honk your horn, you're giving a signal to the people who are inside their homes that they should stay there. And why do they stay there? Well, they don't want to get arrested for one thing, and probably just because they're scared. But in order to arrest them, they need to have a judicial warrant signed by a federal judge. There's been a lot of issues going on there, but the difference between administrative warrant or a judicial warrant, but the law is it should be a judicial warrant. And without that, they can't just go willy-nilly and break down your door and take you. So if you stay in your house, you should be safe. Later that month, well, actually on the 7th of January, Renee Good was killed. She was a commuter. She was basically going, as her wife said, we were armed with whistles, and they were armed with guns. Renee gets killed. On the 24th, Alex Preddy is killed on the intersection of Nicollet and 26th in Minneapolis. On the 20th, Julio Sosa Celis is shot. So he is shot. Basically, the ICE agents that shot him swore in the affidavits that he and a friend attacked them with snow shovels and broomsticks, and they were defending themselves. Within a month, that whole case fell apart. Oh, and Kristi Noem, who was then the Secretary of DHS, as you know, she said these are Minnesota terrorists that were basically prompted to do this by Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, and Tim Walz, our governor. So when they went to charge this, they had eyewitness testimony from 6 people. They had videos because people were using their cameras to film these agents. And they were able to show that that's not what happened. These guys were just shot going into the house in the back of their legs. Now, did Kristi Noem retract that statement and set the record straight? Iffy warrants, violent home searches. On the 23rd was an enormous demonstration in Minneapolis. Like 50,000 people went in the street. Later that same month, off-duty police officers of color are profiled, stopped, and threatened by ICE agents at gunpoint. On the 23rd, a large number of clergy descended on St. Paul. Renee had been killed, and they had basically a large-scale arrest at MSP at the airport. And proud to say that Pam and I go to a large Unitarian church in St. Paul, and 2 of our 3 ministers were arrested that morning. This is the 23rd. I took a photo, a screenshot on my phone, how cold it was that morning, 21 below. So the ministers really went above and beyond to go get arrested on the streets that day. They estimated 50,000 people in the streets. And I left that day being so hopeful. There were so many like-minded people standing up against ICE and in memory of Renee. And it was literally the next day that Alex Preddy was killed. There's Alex, likeness of him. These are signs from St. Paul. ICE abducted someone here. Protect your neighbors. That sign you see in the lower right-hand corner, it just says, everybody is welcome here except ICE. Just some street scenes. This, I believe, where we see the commando-like ICE. These are ICE agents at Nicollet, close to the location where Alex Preddy had been killed. You see ICE agents holding a woman down, spraying pepper spray in her face. And I don't know what the guy with the umbrella is doing, but I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't think that's going to help much with pepper spray or tear gas. The timeline into February now. Pam Bondi demands Minnesota voter rolls. So if they get those, the feds will de-escalate. Which I'm not sure what the voter rolls has to do with ICE, mobilization in Minnesota, but there you go. There are a lot of wrongful detention lawsuits. On 13th of February, Greg Bovino was reassigned Tom Homan, the head of Customs and Border Patrol. announced a steep drawdown, 2,000 agents will be leaving. Wealthy donor pledges $150 million in rent relief out of his own pocket to help people who are too scared to go to work, staying home. He made that announcement on the 13th, and on the 14th, I went to another Monarca training just because it had been a few months and I wanted to go again. It hadn't changed much. I thought the fascinating thing was the lead instructor was a friend of mine from my old job years ago. She's a German immigrant to our country. And her take on this was, not enough people stood up in Germany, and she is now an American citizen. She was going to stand up. And she's 60 or something, but she was going to make this happen. So she was training us. Liam Ramos, he's the little boy in the right-hand corner there. Just heartbreaking story. The guy's 5 years old. Columbia Heights, Minnesota. A friend of mine's daughter's a teacher at that school. He was taken with his dad, and they do this, again, they do it very, very quickly. He's on a plane out of MSP to Dilley near San Antonio, a big detention center. Because of how cute he is, it got tons of national attention. And Ilhan Omar, I can't remember the Texas rep, they go there, they try to get the guy out. The judge says, you can't do this, you've got to return him to Minnesota. He is returned to Minnesota, but as of like 2 days ago, the government denied his father's petition for asylum, and so now it looks like they're heading back to Ecuador. The other picture there, Pam and I went to Target. Target's based in the Twin Cities, and they're a subject of a fair number of demonstrations for a lot of reasons, but they were basically letting ICE mobilize in the parking lot and even using the restrooms, and Minnesota wanted to stop that. And so we were protesting. And just personally, I like protesting at Target because it's nice and warm inside. The Whipple Federal Building. I've only been there once. My wife has been there, I don't know, a dozen times-ish. It's the daily staging area for ICE. It's the scene of early confrontations. It was frequently on the news. You see this, there's like a Jersey wall with a chain link fence there. That wasn't always there. It used to be the protesters would just be standing on the sidewalk across the parking lot, and they would come and do like a show of force and push people down in the snow and, arrest a few people from time to time. It's also a detention facility. It's an office building. It wasn't built as a prison. The conditions inside have been reported as being just absolutely deplorable. Just before coming over here this evening, I was reading how a Muslim woman was locked into a basement with 3 men, toilet there, staying for 24 hours. And they would throw food and water in there from time to time. And, it violates all of their customs and, anybody's customs, let's face it. And we're better than this. And yet this is where we are. Haven Watch. As I indicated earlier, there are people that are taken in by ICE to the Whipple building, and they're released. They're released sometimes without their wallets, without their cell phones, without their coats. They're just released. And what Haven Watch, they saw this right away, and frankly, it's a bunch of moms, and they collected like thousands of coats, thousands of dollars, burner phones, and everybody that comes out there gets a hug and a phone and a coat, and they help them get home. This facility happens to be close to MSP. At MSP, there's large parking garages like at all large airports. There are folks there with cameras who are monitoring the flights as the prisoners go out in shackles and up the stairs, and they're off to Texas. The justice system in the United States is good. It's holding to a large extent, but it's slow. It takes time for briefs to be filed. It takes time for judges to hear the cases. And frequently, this administration, for whatever reason, is often ignoring the decrees that come down from these judges. And so, is it holding? Barely. These are our experiences. What I was given before is a timeline of stuff, frankly, I got right out of an AI query I did and what popped up. As I indicated before, what's out there working with immigrant families is a decentralized group of moms largely and volunteers and grandparents. At our church in St. Paul, every weekday in the morning and in the afternoon pickup, people go out wearing vests, safety vests, and they stand on all the corners around the school, and they scan for ICE agents. And if they see them, the kids go back into school. They can't prevent the ICE agents from taking their parents, but they can film if something comes up, and they're at the ready for that. We have friends that walk with children from their home to their bus stop. Same sort of thing. What can they do if an ICE agent is there for the child? Frankly, not much. But you are able, if you're walking with that child, it means the mom can stay home locked in her house. Same thing on the way home. They walk with the kids from their bus stop to their home. They deliver meals. They deliver fresh food. They help pay their rent. They raise money for appeals. I went to a city council meeting in not St. Paul, in Mendoza Heights, our little town. It's about half the size of Fairhope, 18,000 people. Have a mayor, city council. I go to these council meetings, they're usually like Sleepy Hollow. It's like, this is the basketball court that's going to be repaved, and these are the streets that are going to be closed on the right-hand side while we get rid of potholes, and we're trimming these trees over here. And there's usually about 3 people in the audience. In February, it was packed. You got the police chief in there, and citizens go to the microphone, and they plead with the police for protection from ICE. This one gal, it was particularly moving to me. She'd been in the Marine Corps, and she was a commuter. She was mixing it up and getting in traffic and following these folks, the ICE agents, and making phone calls. And they followed her. So when she got out one morning, they're waiting for her in her apartment parking lot. When she started to drive away, they pinned her in. They broke her window. She's calling for police help. They get her out of the car, pin her down in the snow, ultimately let her go. Person after person, I'd say probably 8 to 10 people got up to the microphone that night. And they were saying, look, we're so close to Minneapolis. What we see is these guys, they're going through red lights. They're harassing us when we're walking our dogs because they're staging in the parks. And the police chief is like, she says, we'll come. I can't say, we'll get there as soon as we can, but you got to understand, we only have so many officers on patrol at any given time. The other thing the police have to deal with are empty cars and empty houses. So the police chief said, she's had one at an intersection where the lights are on, the door's open, there's nobody there, their engine's running. And other times where there's homes where the people are just gone, or cars in a parking lot of a business. Again, abandoned, and after it gets snowed on and a few days go by, they call the police. And then the police has to research how it got there and who owned it. The other thing we do is we attend protests, and we attend memorial services. So far left, those are whistles that are available. My wife just blew them. In coffee shops all over the Twin Cities. Posters about Alex and Renee. And signage you see on a lot of shops, Ice Out. Now I do want to emphasize that state, you know, you've got people across the political spectrum. And the comments that I read, it's very clear that a tremendous number of people support ICE and all their work at what they're doing with immigrants. And I can tell you that it's not easy to be an ICE agent. They're away from home, many of them were over Christmas. They come on 30-day deployments. They're not welcome, this is the key, they're not welcome anywhere. They go in a gas station, people are yelling at them. They can't, they'll close the doors in their faces and not let them use the restrooms. They're taunted. Activists find out where they're staying and they set up loud bands outside their windows to try to keep them up all night. And Tom Homan indicated there was doxing involved. I don't know that to be the case, but doxing is where there's threats made online against them, and that's why they wanted to wear masks, so they couldn't be identified and would not be subject to doxing. And it's just it's been a crazy cold winter. I mean, it's spring coming now, but it's been an unbelievably cold winter. I do want to talk just real briefly. A co-worker of mine at the food shelf I work at was arrested by ICE one morning. His name's Tao Zhang. He's a Laotian guy, mid-30s. I only worked with him once or twice. Good guy. We go to Whole Foods. We have a van. We get produce and milk and things that are soon to expire, and then come home and sort it. Turns out Sean was a volunteer, but he was on basically early release from prison. He had a criminal record, and in addition to a criminal record, he also he was a DACA guy. So I think his parents brought him over from Laos, and he never got around to basically pursuing citizenship as he should have. So he was whisked off. But before he was whisked off, I do want to say he was very respectfully approached by ICE. They were very firm. They let him call his girlfriend and talk to his kids. But he was taken away. And the food bank has enough resources. It's a community center, and they were able to get pro bono counsel to look into Tao's case and said, you know, he's one of those guys that fell right into all the categories the U.S. government's looking for, and he's going to have to go back to Laos. And they even followed his case back to Laos, and he's getting job training. He needs language training. He can't, you know, he talks like you and I do. Yeah. So, but he's back in Laos. So, what's the impact to the Twin Cities through all this? They estimate between a loss of income, revenue to businesses, loss of income of people who stayed home and had to stay away from their jobs, $200 to $600 million. This is so far. It's not over. Right now, there's between 600 and 900 ICE agents left in Minnesota, and we used to have 150. So they still have many multiples of what they had prior to the Trump administration. The impact to immigration overall. Now, the Cato Institute is a right center think tank. It's a libertarian group. And one of their spokespeople is getting a lot of time on Facebook, and he's been testifying before Congress. But he's been able to do a lot of documentation showing that immigrants contribute tremendously to the economy. They contribute to tax revenues. They contribute to the Social Security Trust Fund. They pay income taxes. And they have a lower crime rate than regular old indigenous Americans, or not indigenous, but people like me. And the Metro surge results, specifically, so far 3,000 have been detained. Now, this is key. So 30% of those are legally in the United States. So they're like the folks I was talking about before, that they've been detained. Now, can they be sprung? Maybe. They probably have a pretty good chance of getting sprung and can get back home if they get good legal help. But that's the problem. It's very hard to get that. These people don't have much money. So 30%, a huge portion of them, are legally in the United States. 70% have no criminal history. So you hear about them. You're going to go after the worst of the worst. 70% no criminal history. Only 7%, and this this isn't just Minnesota, this is nationally, and so I'm extrapolating, but 7% actually have criminal convictions for crimes that are felonies, assault, rape, drug trafficking, what have you. And the cost to the U.S. taxpayer is $18 million a week for this. So that's it. Now, I've got a little, I'm done. I'll take some questions. I have a little film I was hoping to show, which is this young gal who reads this poem, which I think is incredibly moving, but we can't get it to work. So, I'm going to read her poem. Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, land of cabins and bonfires and beer. Land of oak and you betcha. And I'm just going to sneak right past you. Land of cream mushroom soup. Land of tater tot hot dish. Land of shoveling your neighbor's sidewalk. Holding the door open. Land of the loon's call across the lake. Land of the northern lights painting the sky. Land of the wilderness and the wild. Land of the Mississippi River's birth. Land of small things turned mighty. Land of tear gas pluming against an umbrella. Land of children too scared to go to school. Land of blood on the car's headrest. Land of boots and camo and guns. Land of SUVs flooding the streets. Land of masked men at my favorite gas station. Land of masked men demanding to see your papers, kicking down doors. Land of masked men choking people I know. Land of masked men brutalizing high school students. Land of whistles shrieking in the night. Land of whistles shrieking in the morning. Land of whistles shrieking in the afternoon. Land of crying in the car. Land of bullets and shovels and brooms. Land of people stolen from their cars and their jobs and their homes. Land of those who are left. Land of neighbors. Land of this is your home, no matter where you come from. Land of whistles and crowds. Land of kicking the tear gas back under the cars. Land of donations. Land of grocery store drop-offs. Land of community patrol. Land of signal chats. Land of printing in multiple languages. Land of you belong here and we will prove it. Land of proving it. Land of learning that love is a verb. Land of finding out exactly who you are and what you're made of. Land of drums. Land of all-night noise outside of hotels. Land of ice agents slipping on the ice. Land of winter and frostbite. Land of nature. It's our first love and ally. Land of tater tot hot dish. Discreetly delivered. Land of cabins offered as a safe place to rest. Land of the northern lights. Our cell phone screens lighting up the internet as we film. Land of 10,000 neighbors. Land of small things turned mighty. Land of the Minnesota goodbye. We're bad at saying goodbye to those we love. We could stay here all night. Shoes on in the entryway, refusing to open the door. That's it.